everyone, and welcome back to NimTV. I am Nim, here with some more Star Wars content, a day after I had another Star Wars video. But there's a very important reason why I just have to have a video about Star Wars today, because it's Star Wars Day as I'm recording it. It won't be uploaded until the day after. Because it's Star Wars Day, they posted on Disney Plus the final episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars ever. Like, this is the last episode. We thought that Season 6 was the last. Actually, no. Originally, everybody thought, oh, Season 5 is the end, because that's when it was canceled after Season 5. And then all of a sudden, they were like, yeah, here's a Season 6 we're going to throw on Netflix. And they're like, okay, that's the last season. That's it. And then a while later, when Disney was thinking about launching Disney Plus, people were hearing a little bit about that. They also released in, I think it was 2018, honestly, there was a sort of little teaser thing released, basically showing that they were like, yeah, we're gonna have another season of Star Wars The Clone Wars, and everybody was hyped out of their minds, okay? Well, everybody who loves Star Wars The Clone Wars was. Because that show just kind of ended and never got the proper ending because Disney bought Star Wars in 2012, and instead of just taking the show off of Cartoon Network and putting it on, like, Disney Channel or something, they just canceled it, even though the show was loved by many and had so many new things, new seasons planned. So, yeah, Disney decided, you know what, we're going to get the old team back together. They got Dave Filoni back, and he's there. I mean, Dave Filoni's working with them a lot anyways, because he did a lot of work on Mandalorian and Rebels and other things like that. But they got Dave Filoni back, you know, and they're like, all right, we're doing this final season. And it is here. It is here now. They've been doing like one episode every week for the past, 12 weeks now, because, that's how there's 12 episodes. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to go into detail about each individual episode because there's 12 of them, and you don't really need to because it's split up into sort of three parts. There's three separate story arcs going on in the season. Clone Wars did this a lot, where they would just have like story arcs going from sometimes one episode, sometimes it would be one-off episodes, sometimes anywhere from 1 to 4 episodes would be a story arc, and then that story would usually be separate from a lot of the other stories in the series, so you could just kind of pick and choose what episodes you could watch. You could skip some, you didn't have to watch them all in order. It's a lot of things like that. There were certainly certain storylines that would be started in one arc and then continue in a future arc, but that was, that's usually how the show would go. So I'm gonna kind of briefly go over the first two. The third story arc in this season is the one I really want to cover. So each one of these arcs is 4 episodes, ultimately making it a 12 episode season. So the first 2 arcs are very similar to what they would have been in the show before. They're honestly kind of mediocre compared to like the really good arcs that the show had to offer back in some of the earlier seasons. So the first arc we have is I guess you could call it like the Bad Batch arc. That was the first episode. Essentially, it's just this batch of clones that were all like deformed or mutations. They didn't quite come out the same way as the other clones did. And then they also discover that somebody might still be alive. Somebody who we previously thought was dead in the show before. Another clone. By the way, spoiler alert for this video. Another clone. Echo. So if you remember back in like season, I want to say 2, it was either 2 or 3, there was the Citadel episodes where they went into the prison, the Citadel, to rescue somebody, and during that, Echo died. Echo and Fives were sort of like 2 clones who were together a lot. Echo died, Fives was still alive. Fives, as we know, died later on. That kind of gets brought up a little bit later in this season, actually. But anyways, turns out he's alive, and so they bring him back. He has like a lot of these like deformities because of a lot of the tests that the bad guys, the Separatists, did on him, because they actually had him kidnapped and were like breeding into his brain and stuff. So he actually ends up joining the Bad Batch at the end. Interesting thing though, these episodes are kind of brought up and it's like a fun little thing, and he's at the end, he's like, all right, I'm going to join them instead of joining the 501st where I was before. And he does. And I don't know how, like, and then it's just never brought up again. I wasn't sure if they were going to bring that back up in the last 4 episodes, somewhere in the finale, but it was just kind of there. Again, that's usually how this show works. It's like a bunch of separate stories, and a lot of times they don't have a lot to do with each other. So anyways, there's that. I don't have a lot to say about that. That's just kind of there. Next up, we have a series of episodes, of 4 episodes with Ahsoka. Now, originally, I thought these were going to be the only episodes with Ahsoka. It was like, they were going to be like, oh, let's see what Ahsoka's been up to since she left the Jedi Order. For those who don't know, she left the Jedi Order at the end of season 5, and now this is kind of shows where she is. She ends up meeting these 2 people who end up wanting to go on these 2 people who live in the underbelly of Coruscant. They want to go on this, they're hired for this mission to run spice to somebody. A lot of things go wrong, and it just kind of goes over what all happens there and how Ahsoka helps them out. And things like that. They kind of show some disdain towards the Jedi because their parents died because of something that happened with the Jedi and the war that's going on, and how, like, oh, the Jedi aren't fighting for peace the way they're supposed to, and there's a whole controversy there. I kind of liked the idea of, like, seeing the whole war in the Jedi from, like, somebody else's perspective than, like, the main characters who are the Jedi and the clones and stuff. Like, somebody who's just some average person trying to make their way, living in the slums of Coruscant. What do they see the Jedi as? That was kind of interesting, although, to be honest, that was the only thing that I found that interesting about these episodes. Otherwise, they were kind of mediocre. Again, these characters, these 2 new characters that they added for these 4 episodes are okay characters, and that's it. But these episodes kind of do somewhat lead into the next series of episodes, because Ahsoka, by the end, learns that Darth Maul is in another location somewhere where they don't know. She goes to find Maul. They want to find Jedi to help them, and Ahsoka's like, okay, well, I'm not a Jedi anymore, but they want her to go to Anakin and Obi-Wan. So that leads us into the next series of episodes. Whoa! These last four may be the best episodes of the entire show. They might just be, they're definitely up there as some of the best. They might be the best. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. All I have to say is it's a great finale. So the basic idea of it is Ahsoka actually meets up with Obi-Wan and Anakin again, and she's like, we need your help to defeat Maul. And Obi-Wan and Anakin are like, Obi-Wan's like, no, we can't, we're on this other mission. We have to go to Coruscant to defend Coruscant because it's being attacked. And it's actually hinted throughout these episodes that this attack on Coruscant is the same attack that happened at the beginning of episode 3 of the movies. You know, where Palpatine was kidnapped and then Anakin and Obi-Wan had to save him. That is that attack. So this is where these episodes start to cross over with the movie, episode 3. And that's what adds the main meat of the story. The main meat of the interest is just seeing how all of this is happening from Ahsoka and Maul's perspective. Obviously, we've seen the movies. I mean, I'm assuming if you watch Clone Wars, you've probably seen the movies. You know what's going on. You know Order 66. You know all that stuff that's happening from Anakin and Obi-Wan's perspective. You know where they are. So we don't really focus on them. They kind of leave to go on their mission, and that kind of leaves them there. So it kind of follows Ahsoka taking the 501st with her, with Rex in command, to try to go after Maul, who is actually on Mandalore. There's this whole war going on in Mandalore, this mini war, that Maul actually created himself to lure Obi-Wan and Anakin to there, but then Ahsoka came instead. So there's a lot of great scenes that sort of go on here. So this whole thing happens, which leads to them capturing Maul, and then Order 66 actually does happen, and Ahsoka, it kind of shows Ahsoka, the last 2 episodes is Ahsoka and Maul dealing with that. Now let's get into some of the juicy details of these episodes. Some of the things that just really made it what it was. So I love the moment before Anakin leaves when he's like, "Hey, Ahsoka, you're back. I did this for you." And he walks in, and there's a bunch of these clones' helmets are painted to look kind of like the red orange stuff that's like on Ahsoka's skin to show their like respect for her, and it was a beautiful moment. And she's like, "Well, I'm not a Jedi anymore," and they're like, they don't care. You know, they know what you did in the war. They know all the great heroic things you did and everything. They were there fighting aside you before when you were still a Jedi. So like they understand all that. So that was a beautiful moment. I loved that. I don't know. There's just a lot of moments in here that really, because of the story that's been built up in this universe, a lot of things in here really hit you emotionally because of what you know about the Star Wars universe in general and just the show. A lot of the characters that are built up in this show, just seeing what's going on with a lot of that in this episode. So Anakin leaves, and the only thing you're thinking is like, you know what's going to happen. You know that she's not going to see Anakin again before Order 66, before he becomes Darth Vader. You know she's not. And it's honestly kind of heartbreaking to see that, to see them say goodbye for like the last time. It's just, eventually she does finally face Maul on Mandalore, and there's a battle. This is actually a really, really well done battle. This is at the end of episode 2 of these 4 episodes. I mean, she's fighting him, and he's like revealing certain visions that he's had and how he wanted Anakin to be the one to come, because he like saw that Anakin was gonna turn to the dark side and join Darth Sidious and everything, and she does not have it. I don't know, this battle was done really well just to see. It kind of also shows the growth of Ahsoka, because earlier on in the show, she would have not been able to have faced Darth Maul like at all. And she's actually holding her own very well in this fight. It really does a good job of like showing the character growth that's gone on with her. That's another point I want to make, is it's just really interesting to see these final episodes and see where Ahsoka's character is compared to where she was at the beginning of the show. So at the beginning of the show, she's just an annoying teenager. And it's really cool to see how her character matured throughout the show, and how like, I don't know, it's just they did a really good job with developing her character over time to create what she is now, what she became. And I guess eventually what she is in, she shows up in Rebels at one point, so I guess eventually what she is in there. I've never seen Rebels, just so you know. Again, that whole scene is good. And then what happens is they actually do capture him, and then they leave the planet with him captured to bring him back to Coruscant. Then the 3rd episode begins, and oh my gosh, the opening of the 3rd episode is done so well. They're in the ship flying back to Coruscant with Maul captured. Ahsoka's there standing beside Rex, and they're just kind of having these conversations about the war and about her kind of viewpoint on it. She's like, what if this whole war is just being fought in vain? And he's like, well, if it weren't for this war, I would have no purpose. I wouldn't exist. And she's like, well, maybe there is some good that came out of it. You know, the clones were existing. They have all these interesting conversations. But everything is being played under this really slow moving. It's just really slow moving. They're just kind of there on the ship, and it's really slow paced build up with music in the background, but really low, somber, you can just tell that it's building up to the moment. The Order 66 moment, which you kind of know is going to happen. And you're just kind of curious about what's going to happen. It's beautiful. But yeah, and then it happens. I I don't know, like it does a great job of really building you up to that moment so that when it happens, it really creates a lot of huge impact. So anyways, it happens. Clones start attacking Ahsoka. She's like, what's going on? She tries to escape. She lets Maul out as a diversion. She goes and like is looking back. She heard, and this is where Fives comes in. Fives is brought up. She heard him, she heard Rex talk about Fives, who, by the way, Fives is my favorite clone out of all the clones. But anyways, she heard him talk about Fives. She goes and like learns more by looking up different like recordings and stuff, and she starts to find out about the inhibitor chips that are in the clones that forces them to follow the order. She learns about this. She actually takes Rex and gets it out of him by the end of the episode. So anyways, you get to the final episode, and a lot of this episode is just them trying to escape. Her and Rex trying to escape while all the other clones are fighting them. Honestly, this entire episode is just heartbreaking because you're seeing all these clones fighting against them. There's so many like moments where you're just like, as if you have seen the whole show and you know these characters, it's honestly very heartbreaking to see this happen, to see them have to fight them. They don't kill them, but they fight them. Maul destroys the hyperdrive in the ship and actually causes the ship to start to fall. Maul escapes in a ship. Ahsoka and Rex fight against them and eventually do escape themselves. There's actually a really good moment before this happens, before the big kind of fat battle against them happens, where Ahsoka and Rex are there, and Rex is like, we have to fight them. They're trying to kill us. We have to fight them. We have to get out of here. And Ahsoka's like, but we can't kill them or whatever. There's this like moment, and she takes his helmet off, right? And you see a tear going down Rex's face. Like literally just thinking about that a second ago made me feel a slight tear going up in my eye. That moment got me. To see the emotion on Rex's face. Like, that's one of the things I was thinking. I'm like, how is Rex feeling about this? Because, like, he must be conflicted knowing these are his brothers. These are the men that he fought beside this whole war. And now, in order to side with Ahsoka, he has to fight against them. But, like, how does that make him feel? And it was just heartbreaking. It's very sad. Anyways, they eventually escape in a ship. The ship crashes, all of the clones dying except for, Ahsoka and Rex make it out alive. They ended up in a ship to escape, a smaller ship to escape. Next comes a beautiful moment. So the camera slowly, after all the action, it slows down. The camera slowly pans over the wreckage of the ship. You see the smaller ship that Ahsoka and Rex are in. You see Rex go back to the ship with a shovel, putting it back in the ship, and you see just sticks in the ground with the clones' helmets on top of them. They went and buried all of the clones that they could find, all of the bodies that they could find. And the music there, it's just this slow, somber moment, and you just see all of the helmets there, all of the clones who were buried, Ahsoka standing there in silence. And then it slowly goes over them until the camera stops on one, and it's Jesse, one of the clones that we do know from other episodes. And then Ahsoka just lays down her lightsaber. It then goes up into the sky and cuts. This is the moment that really hit as well. There's snow now on this planet. Probably years later, you see stormtroopers on this planet. Snowtroopers, there's a lot of snow at this point, covering the wreckage, and Vader is there. He stops by, he kneels down, finding a lightsaber and finding one of the helmets. Thinking about what Vader is feeling about this at the moment, like thinking about the fact that this is the 501st. This is where they died. The clone battalion that we've been following throughout this entire show, and thinking about the fact that Vader obviously was Anakin, and this was the clones that he fought with in the war, and him kind of just paying his respects and seeing Ahsoka's lightsaber there. The Padawan that he trained, one of the people that he loved more than anyone else. This got me. I how could it not, get to me? Like, I teared up a little bit because, I don't know, like, I guess just as somebody who's been watching this show for so long and knows these characters and knows, all of the things that Anakin, Ahsoka, and all of the 501st have been through together, and then to see this is just crushing. I like to think that Vader was actually, like, paying his respects and was kneeling down to mourn for these, because I mean, yes, he's evil, he's turned to the dark side now, but he does still have humanity in him somewhere deep, and I think this moment is part of that. These last 4 episodes could be edited together to create one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. It was just beautiful. A beautiful series of 4 episodes. As long as you know the context of what's going on and you have seen and love these characters for a long time, like I have, it will really, really hit you emotionally. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have been watching this show since they were young. The show's over 10 years old now. There are people who were children when the show came out and are now, like, adults. I don't know. That's just all I really have to say about it at this point. I don't know. I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning when Disney was like, we're going to do a new season. I was like, okay, this is probably just a cash grab kind of thing. Like, we're doing it because we know people want it. And honestly, when the first few episodes were coming out, I was not really fully with it. I was just kind of like, these are like lower level, mediocre level Clone Wars episodes. Like, those episodes of the show that were just kind of mediocre. They were just kind of there. You didn't hate them. You didn't love them. They were just kind of there. Those felt like that. And I wasn't really getting into it. But then once those last 4 episodes started coming and I started watching those, I really saw just like what they wanted to do with it. I felt that these 4 episodes were what the show wanted out of this season. This is what the stories they wanted to tell. This is why the season existed, I felt. And the other 2 story arcs, I feel like were kind of there just so they could fill 12 episodes, All I have to say is the season is off to a rocky start with the first 2 story arcs, but once you get to the last one, it is the most perfect finale that anyone could come up with, I think. I couldn't come up with any more perfect way to end the show. The 500, it ends with the 501st literally dying, all of them. These are the clones you've been following throughout the whole show. The show is a kid's show, but like ultimately the entire thing is just overall extremely tragic. Just kind of looking at how everybody thinks they're fighting for what's right and they're fighting for all these great things, but they're ultimately just being manipulated by one person who's trying to gain power. If you've never seen Clone Wars, first off, you probably shouldn't have seen this because there's a lot of spoilers in there. But if you've watched the Star Wars movies and you've never seen Clone Wars, watch it. Please watch it. It's on Disney+. Keep in mind there are some episodes that are a little rough that you kind of have to get through, but when you get the high points of this series, you really hit high points of this series. It's honestly one of my favorite shows of all time just because of a lot of the high points of the show. For those of you who don't know, I used to have a series on my YouTube channel where I literally reviewed each individual episode of the show. This was back when it was only up to season 6. This was like a few years ago. I would do a separate video for each individual episode. I actually ended up making it to season 5 by the time I was like sick of doing that video series and stopped. And eventually I ended up deleting a lot of those older videos just because there was a time when I thought a lot of my older videos kind of weren't very good, which personally I don't think they were. But I don't know. I guess I was just saying that just to give you a little bit of an idea of how much this show means to me. I don't know where to end this video. I just wanted to kind of go over a lot of the emotions I felt about it. And it's honestly, this video is probably way too long, and I'm sorry about that. But I guess I'll have to go now. So, yes, I hope everyone had a great Star Wars Day yesterday. I don't know what you did for Star Wars Day. Maybe you binge watched all the movies. Maybe you watched the final episode of Clone Wars. Who knows? Who knows what you did for Star Wars Day? But I hope you had a good one. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.